All right. Well, um, hello. Thank you for coming. My name is Shaun Fernando. I'm the enrollment and partners coordinator for the Northridge campus at Austin Community College. I represent the high school programs. This presentation that I'm going to do for you guys today is actually the same exact presentation I do at college nights at our partner high schools, uh, public, private, charter, um, and specifically about dual credit, but a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk to you about pertains to all of the high school programs, whether it be early college start or our career program, career academies like PTech or like the health science academies, right? But the basics of it, like getting in, what is dual credit, that is across the board for all high school programs, right? So let's get into it. It's like, what is dual credit and why it what, and we're going to compare contrast to like some of the other college credit programs that are out there that you probably have heard of. So, what is dual credit and who is eligible for dual credit, right? So, um, dual credit is, is what the name implies, right? Your student is earning college credit while they're still in high school, or in a lot of cases, homeschool. As long as they haven't yet graduated, then they're still eligible for this program. There is no minimum age requirement. There is actually a maximum. I ran into this rarely once when I was working with the Goodwill Excel Center, and um, they have non-traditional students, and anyways, somebody had aged out at 26, but there is actually no minimum. As long as your student is considered, you consider your student a ninth grader, actually a rising ninth grader, so they can technically start if they're in, you know, a traditional school, that summer of the eighth grade year, that's a rising ninth grader. They're eligible to start taking dual credit with ACC. Beyond the dual credit part of that, that cost fee waiver, right? That's that's what we were talking about before in the panel discussion, talking about how dual credit will actually cover up to 12 courses. That's not credit hours. That's up to 12 courses of tuition, either waived completely if they're in district, or or at a significant cost savings. I think there's another slide on that for out of district as well for the fee associated with that. But the biggest thing here to note is um, that dual credit covers specific classes that they can take at ACC, right? So that's mostly core curriculum classes. That's your history, English, government, math, humanities. If they're to take any, they could still take other courses. They just wouldn't fall under the dual credit waiver, and they would be assessed the traditional tuition fee, right?
Is that the same, I'm sorry, and had dual credit, core courses of work, forced degree, certificate in foreign languages, those all fall under the waiver?
Those are
Correct.
all under the waiver, right?
What are forced degrees slash certificates?
So those are what we would call those certificate level one programs, right? So if a student is taking, let's say, what's a good one? I've had a few students take the paramedic basic course. That's a one semester course. They can spread it over several semesters if they're not taking all those classes at the same time, but that's a certificate level one course, right? So if they take those courses, then that's covered under dual credit, right? So their fee structure is taken care of with that. Some of the courses, some of the other certificate level courses are not covered under dual credit. Again, it doesn't mean that they can't take it. It's just that it's not covered under that fee waiver. And then same thing for foreign languages, um, including American Sign Language. Those are covered under the fee waiver as well. So, like I said, compare and contrast what dual credit offers versus some of the other more common college credit courses out there, right? So, a lot of people have heard of AP, advanced placement classes. Something offered from UT is called UT on ramps. That's a lesser known one, but it's out there, and a lot of partner schools have that. They actually offer AP on ramps and ACC courses at some of our public schools, and it's up to the student and their parents to determine what's right for them. So I always give this presentation and say, like, these are the options that you have, right? And so the biggest difference here is that, well, I'll start with what ACC is, and then talk about what these other programs have differently. So ACC, when we talk about dual credit, that student, once a student is enrolled and accepted into dual credit, that student is a full ACC college student. We always want to emphasize, and I always emphasize with incoming students and their parents, that you are now a college student, right? So all the rights and privileges and responsibilities that go with that, right? So even though they may be still a minor, they fall under, and I think there's another slide under here about FERPA regulations, but that's actually like about how your parents are no longer in charge of your transcripts and grades and all that. We can't actually, unless we have permission, and usually if I'm speaking to the student, if the parent's in the room and the student gives permission, there's no problem. But yeah, like a parent can't just call up and ask about how they're doing in the class or share their grades or information. They're considered a full college student, right? So we would hold that information. Little gray area when we start talking about high schools, either public, charter, or private. Those high school administrators have access to those under FERPA. So even though we wouldn't be able to speak directly to a parent, maybe they could go through their high school counselors. But that's a different story. But like I was saying, the differences between dual credit and AP and on-ramps is that once you're taking dual credit classes, right, you're taking the regular course, right? So even though we may have a section of, let's say, English 1301, First English, that section may be full of dual credit students, but if it's not filled, it'll be opened up to traditional students at a certain time, right? So that means your 15-year-old may be taking English with a 35-year-old, who's going right back to school. They're treated exactly the same, and the curriculum is exactly the same. I believe there's another slide in here about what they call academic freedom, and that's specifically talking about like what a professor has to talk about and how they have the freedom to select within that criteria set out by the department, what literature they use for their class. So they're, generally speaking, no, they don't care that your student is dual credit. Again, they're treated exactly like any other college student, and they're expected to perform at that level, right? But also, again, the privileges that come with that as well, right? Versus advanced placement, AP, and UT on-ramps, those are actually still considered high school courses. They are generally taught by the high school professor. Now, with UT on-ramps, it is still taught by the high school instructor, but with an associated professor who oversees that curriculum, right? But generally speaking, that UT professor doesn't come to their campus. Whereas, again, ACC, it is actually taught by an ACC professor. Either we send the professor to that campus, or that student is bused in or taking classes online with ACC and a regular ACC class and with a actual ACC professor. Again, the other thing about the biggest thing about AP and the on ramps is that those are generally a full year course, right? Just like a regular high school course. Whereas the dual credit is one semester. So typically in fall or spring, that's 16 hours, but they could take an 8-hour course, or in the summer, 10-hour, or even shorter, excuse me, hour, I meant week, 16-week, 10-week in the summer, or as short as 5 weeks in the summer, right? So they're all those courses I just said, they're exactly the same course. They earn the same college credit. It's just in a compressed time schedule. And can your student absorb that information in that time period? But yeah, you could fit, the biggest advantage of that is you can fit, all of your English. You can do English 1301, 1302 in 1 year in the fall semester, second semester, as it would be to do 2 high school equivalencies over the course of a full year, if your students, at that level. The other thing about these 2 programs is that there is a cost associated with them. So the AP exam at the end, I believe, is $150. I want to say that's just to take the test, and taking the AP test and UT on-ramp's actually the same as well. When you take the test, it doesn't matter what you made in the class, like your high school grade. It's whether or not you get a 3 or above on the AP. Same thing for UT on-ramps. They have a different scoring system, but basically, now UT on-ramps is a little bit different. They can decide if they want college credit or high school credit or not, depending on how well they did, right? But for the AP courses, you get your high school credit, and then you have to sit for the AP exam, right? So depending on whether or not your student is a good test taker, or however they were feeling that day, determines whether or not they make any college credit for that entire coursework. And then the last thing in here, TSI. So I think we talked about TSI for a little bit before, but TSI stands for Texas Success Initiative. It is the baseline Texas college entrance exam for all Texas public schools, right? For higher ed, right? So it's a math, reading, and writing assessment. I'm not going to say it's easier, but it's a much more straightforward test than like the SAT or ACT. But yeah, it just covers those 3 areas. And for our dual credit students, they have to be TSI complete before moving on to taking any of our dual credit classes. Whereas, whereas in traditional students on the trad side, you can come in without being TSI complete, and we would set them up with developmental courses. Yes?
Does TSI complete mean they hit a particular?
Good question. Yeah, I think I have it in here. The TSI. I don't. So the TSI consists, like I said, of reading and writing section that actually got combined into one now, and a math section. It's not a pass or fail. They have what they call benchmarks for each one. So for the math section, it's a 940 with a 5 diagnosis or above, and that means they're considered math ready, right? For ELAR, the English language and reading section, is a 945 with a 5, but if they're under 945, if they have a 5 or 6 diagnosis, then we can take that as well. In addition to the TSI, they can take the PSAT, SAT, or ACT as a TSI waiver if they've already taken those. If they've never taken any testing before, then we would say go ahead and take the TSI. But if they have already taken these other national exams, then if they meet those benchmarks, then we can use them as well. Good question. TSI is probably the biggest difference between AP classes versus like UT on-ramps. Neither of those require TSI. Again, going back to the fact that dual credit is a real full-on college level course. That's why it requires the TSI. And because they are early college, that's why they have to be TSI complete before, unlike our traditional students who are getting there, right, for the early college, the dual credit side before they're graduated high school, they have to be TSI complete, right? So when we talk about dual credit and high school programs, we often just say dual credit, but it actually covers everything that a student may take at ACC. So there technically there is a difference between dual credit and co-enrollment. So dual credit means that student is getting their high school, checking off their high school list to meet the high school requirements for graduation, and they're earning that college credit. Whereas co-enrollment, again, it's the exact same process. They have to do the TSI, they have to fill in the application, but the co-enrollment means that they're taking classes that may not check off the high school side, right? So they're just getting college credit for that. It could still be covered under dual credit, like if it's a core curriculum class, like in this example, that high school only gave credit for government 2305. I think that's first year government, but then that we have a government 2306, second year government, modern government, and that's not covered by the high school, but it is still a core curriculum class, so it would be covered under dual credit, even though it's technically co-enrollment. It's really technical babble, but it's really just saying that they can still take these classes, right? If they're interested in it. So I think we talked about this a little bit already. Who can take dual credit classes? So there is no age limit, age minimum, like I said before. It's actually what we call rising ninth graders. And in the homeschool setting, that's up to you, right? So if you determine that your student's ninth grade level student, then they're ninth grade. We're not looking at a transcript or anything like that shows, okay, they've completed such and such work. No. Their college readiness is shown through the TSI, or again, the TSI, PSAT, ACT, SAT, if they haven't taken the TSI yet.
Where do they take the TSI?
Good question. Yeah, so they can take, normally at a high school, private or charter, they offer the TSI, but if a student's like a homeschool student, they'll come to us, and they can go to any ACC campus and there's no sign up or anything. You do have to pay online. There's a fee associated with that. It's $29. But other than that, no appointment necessary. Go to any ACC campus, take the test. It's untimed, but it takes most students about an hour per section, so about 3 hours total. They'll give them, it's all computerized, like a progressive test, right? So they'll give them scratch paper, calculator, whatever they need. They'll finish the TSI. They'll actually give them a printout of their scores and a PDF of their score report that they'll turn back into their coordinator to finish the enrollment process. Yes, sir.
I was just gonna ask if there's a limit to how many times they can.
Good question. No limit on the TSI. We want them to do that. So when they actually go through the enrollment process and start the TSI, there's a TSI information page on our website. Steps 1 through 5 tells them how to actually get the TSI done. And part of that is doing that pre-assessment activity, which is just a fancy way of saying practice tests. And that's actually from the TEA, from Texas Education Agency. That's their practice test, and we have a copy of that on the ACC website. Get familiar with that. If your student is comfortable with that, then they're probably going to do very well on the TSI itself. And it's actually a requirement on the ACC side before you can take the TSI with us. So do that pre-assessment activity, pay for it, go to ACC campus, and then get the TSI done. Good question. Yeah, so again, from on this side, we were talking about some of those other waivers that we were talking about. The PSAT, SAT, or ACT are the three most common. Those are all listed in that enrollment checklist that I have some at the table downstairs, and they're also available on our website. If you go to ACC, the main website, and just go to the high school programs section, there's PDFs of everything that we're talking about today. So I think somebody was asking about this before. Where are the classes actually held? So if your student's going to a public or charter school, then there's a possibility of we being ACC sending a professor to their campus, and they would take it at the regular campus, but it would be an ACC professor teaching that course. For some of our privates and charters, actually some public schools as well, they'll bus their students in, and they'll take it at a regular ACC campus, and they'll work that into their schedule that they have to be at campus at that time, right? Students, again, going back to how dual credit students are full-on ACC students, they could take any course that is available to them. You can't take a course that's not at an ACC campus if you're not part of that school. So, like, dual credit from let's say LBJ High School could not go to some other school, or a homeschooler, unfortunately, couldn't go to a high school where they offer a dual credit course, right? You have to be at that school, and they wouldn't be able to sign up for it anyways. It'll say for instance, Navarro is one of my ECHS schools, so those classes, if they're taught at Navarro, it'll say for Navarro students only. But all the other dual credit classes, if it doesn't have a restriction on it like that, then your student would be able to get into that class, right? So whether it be in person at an ACC campus, or online, or after hours, we offer classes after 5:30 and Saturdays as well. So if your student's looking to take something after hours or on a different time schedule, they could still take those classes either in person or online. And the online component, they've really vamped up since COVID. So it used to just be some just Zoom type stuff, but now they're doing synchronous and asynchronous. So if the students are good with that, they want to actually have like a virtual learning environment, then they do have those classes that they have to log on at a certain time, and it's turn on your camera and everybody do that, almost what I call like traditional like virtual learning now that most people are sick of. But they could have the asynchronous style, which is again kind of like getting into like this is the college model, right? You're given all your materials up front. They have access to Blackboard. They'll do pretty much all their interactions through Blackboard, turning in tests and quizzes. Like the professor may say, have this in by 5 p.m. on Friday, and then they have the whole week to do it on their own terms, right? They'll post the PowerPoints. They may have a pre-recorded lecture, and then they'll no matter if it's in person or online, all professors are required to have their office hours. So they'll always have availability to the professors. And then I used to say this all the time, that students get free tutoring. It's not free. You already pay for it in your tuition. although if you're in district, that tuition was waived, so I guess it was free to you. ACC has really great tutoring services. And again, it doesn't matter if they're taking them online or if it's at a campus, they can once you're an ACC student, you have access to everything at every campus and online. So they can get, like, let's say they're going to one of the smaller campuses like my campus, Northridge, we have a decent library. But if you go to like the Highland campus with the ACC Accelerator, which is like a learning lab on steroids with like 500 something computers, huge breakout, which are basically classrooms in themselves, breakout rooms for private tutoring, that's all paid for already in their tuition, right? So I always tell students, like, there are so many resources with ACC for you to succeed. There's really, yeah.
Do you have a lot of asynchronous digital, online,
There,
dual credit courses?
I would say most of the core curriculum classes have some sort of online presence. Yes,
Maybe not asynchronous.
more asynchronous than the virtual, than synchronous now. Yeah, I think that's what people want now, and that's what the students are gravitating towards. So they're doing more of the asynchronous style, but I just want to emphasize that there's still real-time classes, right? Just because the professor is like posting stuff and you don't really see them at a certain time, they're still like, they have their deadlines. The professors are still grading papers and things like that. So the classwork is still done in real time, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I like those because it allows for independent learning.
It does.
There's a term that you said a minute ago that said the traditional virtual classroom, like somehow we've been doing it for 100 years.
Well, I mean, it's exactly. And I think that's what that's the learning style that a lot of students like. But like I said, it may not be for everyone. So they still do have the virtual classroom model as well. Right? So why take dual credit classes? So the biggest thing there is money, right? So if you're in district, and in district refers to the student's actual residency. So when you fill out the application online, whatever residence you put down is what the university, what the college will use to determine your residency code, right? So it's not, so if they're going to private or charter, even public school, it doesn't matter what that resident code is, right? So for homeschool, same thing. Whatever you put there. So if you're already paying the ACC district tax, and the easiest way to check that is either ask your landlord or check your mortgage statement, or everything's available on the district appraisal for your county as well. If you pay the district tax, then you're in district, right? So that's what we were talking about before, how dual credit covers up to 12 courses of which is different than 12 credit hours. So a course is typically 3 credit hours, but if we're talking about anything with a lab, that could be up to 4 credit hours. If they're taking something like a kinesiology, which a lot of like the homeschoolers do like to do kinesiology with ACC, and that's only a 1 credit hour course usually, and that counts the same. So you've used up 1 course for your kinesiology, whether you took a 1 credit hour versus a 4 credit hour, right? But yeah, so typically if you're taking 3-hour classes, that's approximately 36 credit hours, right? And that's the biggest thing. If you're out of district, I think there's another slide here, yeah. So if you're out of district, and this has gone up substantially. I think this is 2018, 2019. I need to update this because this has gone up substantially. But the dual credit tuition waiver is the same, 0 for in district, $150 for out of district. This used to say out of district fee eight 34. I think it's like 859 or almost closer to 900 now for a typical 3-hour class. So if you're out of district. So if you're out of district, like for instance, Pflugerville, they're out of district. They don't pay the district tax. You can still take dual credit and you'll still get that waiver. It'll be $150 versus 850 something, right, per class, right? And that tuition is specifically that waiver is specifically for tuition. Any course fees are additional fees that all students are responsible for.
So if you're in district, it covers the tuition fees,
Correct.
the voucher, regardless.
The dual credit waiver covers your tuition fee. If
Not the general, not the student.
right, but a good question. Okay, I see where you're going. Dual credit students are waived those other fees as well. Yeah, so it doesn't matter if you're in district or out of district, they don't pay those general fees as dual credit students. They are all dual credit students, whether they're in district or out of district, are still responsible for their own book fees and supplemental items. So like First Day is an online product that a lot of professors use. There's a fee associated with each student. It's like $15-20 or something like that. And doesn't matter if they're in district or not, they have to pay that. A lot of classes are now moving towards what they call ZTC, zero textbook cost. If you see that listed on the course syllabus and the course scheduler, those classes have no additional costs, right? So all of their textbooks and everything are available online, and they should have no additional costs other than the tuition. High school versus college. So the biggest thing to take away from this slide I want you to see is what I was talking about before, is academic freedom, right? So again, ACC dual credit classes are full-on college courses, right? They're taught by college professors, and they will teach to that standard, right? So that academic freedom comes in when we're talking about students under 18 taking a course. That professor is under no obligation to change their curriculum for your dual credit student, right? So make sure that like I said, all the syllabus are available online before you register your student. Read through that, see if you agree or disagree with what they're going to be talking about, right? And then the other thing in here, again, they are full college students at that point. They are responsible for their own academic success. Now, ACC, on our end, we have our own academic success coordinators, or basically our own academic advisors that are assigned to our dual credit, all of our high school program students once they're in the program. So they get a little bit more support and help than a traditional student, whereas a traditional student would have to go and make an appointment and see somebody if they had a problem. We're going to check in with them every midterm and progress report with that student. But again, it's with the student, not with the student parent. So if you want to know what your student's doing, they need to talk to you, or we need to have you both in the same room at the same time. And then usually, like I was saying before, we are setting these students up for success, right? These are early college students. We don't want them to because once you earn a college grade, those credits never expire, right? So that college transcript follows you wherever you go in your higher ed education, right? When you transfer somewhere else, even if you don't want to show it to another school, they will find it. It's in the system. So we don't want our students to have anything below a C. So it's better to have a withdrawal. A withdrawal is not great, but it's better to have a withdrawal than a failing grade. So we will talk to that student and advise them about withdrawing from a class before things get to that situation. But like I said, we have a lot of interventions in between. There's so many opportunities to speak to either your professor directly or tutoring options. So we try to get them the help they need before we get to that situation. Again, I think this is the FERPA regulation that I was talking about before. Once your students in the system, we can help you get them enrolled in everything, but and I like to tell parents, the rule of thumb is, if I have to look them up, if I have to look up anything like a grade or even their status, like why is this hold on here, something like that, I'm probably not going to be able to talk to you directly. We need to be talking to you, the student, and you at the same time. But if it's anything other than that, general information, I'm happy to talk to parents. So really, this is just about the FERPA and letting you guys know that once you're in this program, your student, whatever their age is, they are considered a college student. Academic success, SAP. This goes again talking about how once they're in the program, they have to maintain that average, and that's a C average or better, right? So if not, so no Fs will be given, right, for completion. So they have to be withdrawn from that class. But that will be a conversation. If for any reason they get to that point, that would be a conversation they're going to have with that academic success advisor. The academic advisor will advise them where to go from there. Persistence rates. So the students, the best information that we had the transfer rates. So ACC has the #1 transfer rate to UT Austin and Texas State, right? So the persistence rates from the dual credit side actually drive those numbers, right? So our students, even if they don't complete a full associate's degree with us, they're more likely to go on to a four-year college than traditional students, right? So the persistence rate is pretty high on the dual credit side. I think I just covered that same thing here. Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have any cards with me today. So if you want to take a picture of my contact information here, I'll be happy to answer any questions directly. So like I said, I'm at the Northridge campus, but we have coordinators at each campus for dual credit. So whichever is closest to you, if it's not me, then you'll be talking to one of my associates, and we'll get you set up with dual credit. Yeah.